Much from Kim, and I learned so much, from Rachel. And see if I can remember the story in the right way. I've been working on a book talking about what I experienced out here for the first year. It goes back a little bit, and one of the things that I was not aware, but having gone through FBI documents and visiting with some of you and some of my own experiences, apparently in 1973 and 1974 and into 1975, the FBI was convinced that AIM had a hit list. It was also convinced that the Winity Defense Committee was actually helping put this list together and collecting funds and arms and securing training for everybody. And I was wondering about the attitude of the FBI when I got here. And one of the things that I remember Rachel Tilson being asked about AIM's hit list, and she said, hit list? They don't even have a mailing list. And so it was just one of the, I cannot describe or tell enough stories, or at this point even remember enough stories, about how wonderful it was to work with wonderful people. And, I said not to myself not too long after I got here that, and I've now been here for 47 years, that I will never be able to give back as much as I learned and got from working with people here, many of whom in this room. So, yeah, I know it's hard to tell. I mean, there are so many stories, some of which I am not going to tell here. But these are pretty remarkable people, Ken and Rachel Tilson, and I got to know Theo, and I got to know Faith, and but they were not as connected as like Madonna. I mean, Madonna was part of the Defense Committee, Lorelei was part of the Defense Committee, and so many other AIM people, and it really made, part of how that whole committee was put together, which I could see so many different influences, including Ken and Rachel's, but having the indigenous community take the primary responsibility of keeping track of us, keeping us straight, keeping us on, going in the right direction, but also helping to find people, whether it be witnesses or, whatever we needed. It was one of the most remarkable working relationships, and really made the Defense Committee and AIM as successful within the legal realm as it got to be. And I think we've learned a lot. We're still learning, from all that. And I know the lessons from Ken and Rachel will be sticking with me for the rest of my life. So.
Well, I love that you asked that question, because Faith and Theo and Rachel were all matriarchs. And quite powerful women, each of them. And I'd say about Rachel, in my experience, she was the one that softened the edges of her husband. For people who knew Ken, you'll remember that. And for Ken, I've been thinking recently about my first days at the committee, getting ready to come here. And I described it as typing, so these are very old days, no cell phones, but also no computers, for those of you who are young. So to type a legal brief meant you typed the entire 40, 50 pages, and then Ken took his pen and he marked it up, and then I retyped the same 40 or 50 pages with a few words changed, and then he marked it up, and you get my point. So Ken was brilliant and generous and persnickety as all get out, and very, very particular about what he was doing with the law.
Well, I just remember Ken, meeting Ken and the other attorneys who started this organization, and my impression of Ken was the little guy sitting in the corner with smoking the pipe. Yeah. But he was always leading us in the direction forward, so we could represent people and listen to the people and follow what they wanted as well as what the law demanded. So it was an honor to work with Ken, be led by him, it was as much an honor to be in the office with Madonna, the other women who are teaching us, as has been mentioned, so much about their lives and how we could help them. And it was an honor to us.
Gail, I think I remember Rachel different, because I remember Rachel as someone that you could really get the straight story from. She would tell it like it is, and I really appreciated her for that. And I think Ken, I looked at as sort of the regional heavy, the regional sage of so much that had come before in this region, and I think he took that responsibility very heavily. And but they were just good friends, is how I remember them so well. And I also pretended I couldn't type because I didn't want to get stuck typing.
Smart.
But what happened is I ended up Xeroxing into the late hours of night in their law office, wherever it was. So that was my association with them. So I got to know them pretty well.
And Ken actually recruited me to come out to South Dakota. Had met Ken for the first time. He was a friend of my family's, and I was having an argument with him about law. I hadn't been to college, and I wanted to go to law school, and we had a big argument. And then he said to me, "What are you doing right now? We could use you out in South Dakota if you would come." And so I did. And then I came to South Dakota, and people would look at me and say, "You argued with Ken?" I didn't know better. I stopped doing that. But I went on to work with Ken and Rachel, and Rachel and I worked together in the Native American Solidarity Committee after the trials, and really feel they're a part of my family as well. And Madonna was our liaison when we were in the Native American Solidarity Committee, and she continued to teach us and still does. So,
Yes, yes, Madonna is a sister, a real sister, so, thank you. And Gladys, isn't it? Ellen Booskamp, Lou Bean, so many, Pedro Bissonette, so many people. Sievert, who was my heart, Sievert down there. There were two aspects to these cases. There was the legal aspect, which was critical at being able to navigate the law, to stop the prosecution from putting in tainted evidence. Remember, the cases were dismissed on governmental misconduct. Yeah. So the other aspect was the legal, the political, which was about sovereignty, which was about recognizing people's independence. And we were often at odds and trying to put forward those two, particularly for us on the reservation. Our focus was political, and we gathered the evidence, but always with a political eye. Ken was really helpful, so important at beginning to kind of sift it out. And this is important here. Legally, we have to do this. And, I don't think there were so many beautiful things that happened because of the guidance. So I'm going to go back to it, of Madonna and Gladys and Ellen and the whole group, Lou Bean, and Agnes Lamont. Just so many beautiful people who guided us. So thank you.
Well, I think the most important thing about Rachel is that Rachel was a matriarch, and so was her mother. Her mother
Yes.
was Meridel Lasser, who was a feminist author and a populist from Kansas. And so she was following a long tradition and then turned it on and over to us to keep following it in our various directions. And I think in what Sam said that's really important, and I want to hear give tribute to Mark Lane, who had this very interesting relationship with Ken in terms of how to be a lawyer. But the point was that Mark said, this is not a criminal case.
Yes.
This is the story of colonialism that must be brought into this courtroom with every single case. And that's what we've done. And so I don't want to take any more time. There's so many more I was sleeping under my desk in the Wounded Knee office because we were getting calls at 2 o'clock in the morning about, you know, all the terror that was going on in the reservation. I was a part of experiencing that terror myself and with Kathy and several other legal workers. It just sensitized us in a way to how inadequate the law is, how much more has to be done, how important movements are, and how important community is. And you brought that to us, and thank you so much for doing so.
Well, wait a minute, I was just one, there was many, you know, and, but back to Ken and Rachel, the first time I met Ken Tilson was in Wounded Knee, and the barricades had come down, and there was negotiations going on, and I think Senator Aberesk at that time was real in Congress, and he was helping with. Anyway, because the military presence was the main, you know, thing, so all these negotiations were going on, and I came out of I was a medic, so I came out of the medical center there, and I saw this guy walking real slow, and he had a pipe, his head down, and he was walking real slow, and I looked at him, you know, and the politics and the things that were going on, the negotiations were breaking down fast. And all of us were always kept, you know, up to date of what was going on. There was never a time when we didn't know what was going on, okay? And that was a valuable lesson I learned from Wounded Knee, to keep the people informed at all times. But anyway, so I see this guy walking, so I go up to him, you know, and I said, so who are you? So he said, you know, Ken Tilson. I said, so, you came in with, you know, who'd you come in with? And he said, well, you know, he said, I'm an attorney and I'm just, you know, here to support, but I'm also, you know, he was going on telling me it was good. So then I said, well, you know what's going on. I said, once you guys leave and the roadblocks come down, they're going to come in, and it's probably going to be gas, you know. And so I told him, I said, you can't leave, man. And he kind of looked at me and he said, well, yeah, well, maybe you have a point there. And I said, okay, well, keep that in mind, man, because they're going to open up on us as soon as you white guys leave. You know? And he said, white guy? He said, I'm not white, I'm Jewish. Well, I didn't know. I mean, what did I know? You know, it's like, oh, well, good. You know, because I thought, wow, that sounds like pretty powerful to me, you know. Anyway, so that's when I first met Ken. And then later on, I met Rachel. But this was a few years later. Anyway, but the survival school was going strong, and they invited us to come to Minneapolis. Before that, Rachel got to be friends with my mom, Faith Traversy, okay? And somehow they decided that Mark, Sr., should come, you know, to the survival school, come and hang with me for a while. And so he did. But he was already hanging around the legal office and knew all the young people, knew my kids and kind of knew everybody already. So he stayed, and you know what? He never left.
Right.
So as a result, we have his grandchildren, okay? And Mark Jr. is here, okay? And I don't know where Nick is. He's probably busy somewhere. But as a result of that, for one thing, there's Indian Collective. And the funding we got to put on this banner exhibit is thanks mainly to Indian Collective. So that's what it takes, you know, to hand down this work. You know, first with your family, okay? Then your extended family, and then your community. So as a result, from that young 19-year-old Mark Tilson, who came with his parents, Ken and Rachel, and stayed. So that's part of the history of the movement. I just thought that was important to know. So thank all of you.
You all know that Ken was came among the first of us lawyers to come here. And I knew him, worked with him for most of the 71-day period. And the more I hear people talking about Ken, the more I regret not knowing him better. He was one of the people I was really looking forward to talking to at this reunion, naively forgetting that 50 years is 50 years. And I think I would have really enjoyed talking with him and sort of settling the Mark Lane, Ken Tilson dispute. I'll never admit I was on the wrong side, but I wasn't really aware of it being a dispute.
Well, thank you. Thank you so much for sharing your stories. I just wanted you all to know that we wanted to, part of this lunch is because of them. So, thank you so much. Thank you.
Oh, we're not gonna talk
I
more?
don't want you to be standing and standing and standing. Well, we're gonna get ready for lunch now. So, before we do, I have a couple announcements. For those of you who missed the information, the lunch is in honor of Faith Traversy, Theo Means, Ken and Rachel Tilson. So after lunch, we'll go into the exhibit area and the live stream is going to start at 1, so there's several cameras set up in there. If you don't want to be on film, let one of the team members know, and you could just sit in here. You could go hang out outside. But if you also want to be interviewed, let one of the team members know. We're wearing the t-shirts. We want any interviews that you want to offer to put in the Warrior Women Project archive, that we're putting oral history archive. Also, for those of you who missed it, the live stream will be on the Warrior Women Project Facebook page and YouTube, Lakota People's Law Project Facebook page and YouTube, Last Real Indians Facebook page and YouTube. Also, the film Warrior Women. If you haven't seen it, there's a film called Warrior Women, and that is showing now for free online at warriorwomen.org/WK50. And so you'll be able to watch it online until midnight on Monday. So you could share that information with your families as well. So warriorwomen.org/WK50. How long is it? Little over an hour. I think it's like 67 or 60.